You're listening to Wild Things and Wild Places, a Muley Fanatic Foundation podcast that aims to discuss issues and efforts related to the Muley Fanatic Foundation mission, the conservation of mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley Fanatic.
It's time for Wild Things and Wild Places. And here's your guide, Joshua Corsi.
And welcome to Wild Things and Wild Places. I'm your host, Joshua Corsi with the Muley Fanatic Foundation. Very special episode, our inaugural episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. And joining me today, co-founder of this fabulous organization that was started more than 11 years ago, into our 12th year now, Joey Fagel. And this is certainly new for us, but we certainly see the value in the format and the platform of podcasts as they continue to grow, and a wonderful tool of communications. Particularly for our organization, we've seen this as a valuable effort to be able to help share information about the ongoings of the Muley Fanatic Foundation, our supporters, our partners, and those that in general just care about wild things and wild places. Obviously, we have a very near and dear, no pun intended, but a love for mule deer and the conservation of mule deer. But we're going to unpack a little bit about what the Muley Fanatic Foundation is, how it got to be. We'll use the first couple episodes here as we launch into this new endeavor to showcase the ins and outs of MFF and those that support MFF, to hopefully bring just another medium to allow folks to understand and know the inner workings of this organization and how it has gotten to be where it's at. So on that, Joey, why don't you unpack that? How did Muley Fanatic Foundation come to be? Boy, we've heard that a time or two.
Yeah, and it's always hard to try and figure out where to begin. But really, I guess it's easy. We just at one point had a phone conversation. Started with another organization, volunteered a lot of time and effort for raising funds for conservation, and we both realized that mule deer is one species that probably needs the most help out of them all. For 5 years, we volunteered our time to do our fundraising events and raised a lot of money, and then it just carried on. I think just knowing that doing this could make a difference, and making that difference one way or the other is by putting a lot of money on the ground. Granted, those 5 years of volunteer time, we didn't see a lot of that money go to the ground, but that's okay. It benefited something and benefited a mission, and it benefited the species. But after that 5 years, realizing all the time that we put forth and not seeing that some of that stuff come back to our local area, we put our heads together and knew that we can do this. That's when we established this organization, and we had a lot of help from local folks, a lawyer and an accountant, Brad Radokovich and Charlie Barnum.
Yeah.
They said, hey, you guys need to do this on your own. And so we did.
And we'll help you.
Yeah. Well, they helped us establish the nonprofit 501c3 paperwork and all that stuff that goes along with this. I mean, it's not just go have a fundraising event and raise some money and do it. You have to get everything documented and
bylaws, articles of incorporation, get a board.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it. And, we started off to where it was just going to be a volunteer type of organization. We'd raise some money here in Southwest Wyoming, and folks started seeing what we were doing, putting some money on the ground. They wanted to be a part of it. Then they extended out and wanted to be in Cameron to do a fundraising event in Colorado and Casper. I mean, it was crazy how quickly folks started really gaining interest into what we were doing, and that's when Brad Radokovich and Charles Barnum wanted to get us going and get us employed, get things rolling, and that's when you came on as staff and started leading that first year. Man, that was a
hard to
load of things
12 years ago, huh?
Oh man, I mean,
I think the one thing that was it's worth noting, and it's the guide or the constitution, if you will, for how we move forward, what decisions are made, is that the accountability to the mission statement that we had to come up with initially in organizing this effort as an organization, as a 501c3 we put a lot of thought into that mission statement. It certainly is a very long sentence as a mission statement, but we built that intentionally on 3 pillars that we felt were absolutely instrumental to hold this organization accountable to the efforts of what would not be today, but put forth for the present and tomorrow. And that mission statement is to ensure the conservation of mule deer and their habitat, and to provide such supporting services to further the sport of hunting and sound wildlife management. And there's a lot in that mission statement. That sentence is pretty powerful. As I mentioned, it certainly, it's the beacon for us in how we move forward, how we organize. And I think sometimes, it's just a mission statement, but for us, those 3 pillars, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think on the surface, if you look at a mule deer conservation organization and you see something in a mission statement that, says to ensure the conservation of mule deer, what does that mean? There's a lot there. What does that mean? Is that just habitat work? Is that research work? Is that policy work? Is it relationships with private landowners, with federal agencies, BLM, Forest Service, state agencies working with our state wildlife managers? It certainly, it's all of that. But then it's so much more too. Then you look at providing such supporting services to further the sport of hunting. I mean, that's a different road. That's a different path.
That's just something you think about your kids, really. I mean,
right.
The future, that it's like we all have kids, and that's why we put that in there. You're thinking, well, not only do I want to save this species for them to experience as they get older, but we also want them to have that hunting heritage and continue on with that with their kids. Because truly, I mean, my family, of course, has been that way since great-great-grandfather. And it's carried on.
Gatherers,
yeah, and it's carried on. And it's not just about harvesting the animal, it's the whole experience. You'll hear many sportsmen talk about, hey, it's about the memories. That's why I go hunting. It's because of the memories that you gain and gather for your son, your daughter, I mean, even your spouse, and you want to continue that. And that's part of it. And that's, I mean, in today's world, I think hunting is probably one of the most important things you could probably get a kid involved with.
Absolutely. And you think of just the character building, the ethics, the quality time spent in the field, the learning, for whether it's learning the weather, learning the necessities of being able to sustain yourself in those elements,
being in God's country.
In God's country. Yeah, well said, brother. I think as a heritage, and I think this is where it was so important early on in designing this mission statement to encapsulate so much of what was passion-driven for this effort. Youth is synonymous, truly, when you think conservation. I mean, they run parallel together, and I think if you don't have them in the same mindset, then you're missing the boat. There are many things of effort on the ground, habitat, landscape level projects for conservation that you might not even be able to measure the fruit of your own labor in your lifetime. But the cause and the effort is valuable in knowing that you're making a difference beyond your living years. And I think that's where youth, the future generation, I think that's where that responsibility of stewardship is so prominent in the overall effort of the organization. Specific to the sport of hunting, I think that as hunters, birds of a feather flock together, we tend to think that a lot of people hunt. In the overall picture of the demographics of our nation, the hunting heritage is actually a very small percentage of those that actually participate annually as a way of life to be able to provide a protein source for their family, on top of all the memories that are made just with the recreational activity of the pursuit of hunting. But hunting is an important component of what makes us who we are. And I think it's something to be celebrated. I don't think that it's something to be shameful in. We live in a day and age where we've seen in our lifetime as nearly 50 years old, the two of us, we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't grow up with all of the different social media platforms, the cell phones, the pictures that are sent instantaneously, and the promotion of one's activities. It was, it was a phone call, or you wrote a letter. You sent,
or you got on your bike and rode down the street to the house.
Yeah. I mean, things have just changed and evolved, but there are even, as we've seen, social media platforms where the use of firearms are not permitted, or the promotion of firearms are not permitted. And, a firearm is a tool. It is a weapon. It is a tool, whether that be for archery or black powder or a large centerfire caliber rifle. It is a tool that is used in the means of hunting and ultimately the killing of an animal. It's often, we harvested it. It sounds soft, but it is the taking of a life ethically, the preparation of that meat and the consumption of that meat for diet. And I'm not bashful about it. I'm a hunter. I kill things and I eat things, and I'm proud of that. And it's how it's done that's promoted, that I think was so important that we have that included in our mission statement, to be able to know that that's something that needs to continue, and it needs to be continued in a responsible and accountable manner for it to continue to persist overall, because there are many that would like to see hunting just stopped.
Yeah.
Not on our watch. Not on our watch.
No.
I think beyond that, Joey, we should touch on it. Furthering the sport of hunting, we have a program that is specific to youth at the Muley Fanatic Foundation that has made 87 life-changing experiences happen. And it falls within our mission statement under the furthering the sport of hunting, and that is for those that are at a lesser advantage with health. And that's the Putting the U in Hunt program that we've had from the onset. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and, we talk about hunting's important for memories. This is like the top dog piece of this organization.
It is.
You meet these people for the first time when they arrive, and you go out on a hunt and you experience just everything we just talked about. And here's this kid that has been struggling with cancer or whatever life-threatening illness he may have or she have. To see a smile on that child's face because of this entire experience, I don't know, I'm lost for words. Like, you can't really describe that feeling. I just don't think you can.
No, and you can't duplicate it, even though we have been involved in several of these hunts over our duration of existence. Each one of those smiles, each one of those experiences are unique to themselves and always are at a whole new level. It's never comparable to a previous year. They're on their own. They stand on their own merit, and their satisfaction is it fills the tank. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But specific to the program, how it came to be, what's the process, why is it so important for us to promote and advocate for? Those are valuable things that need to be talked about.
The Wyoming Game and Fish Commission has special commissioner licenses that will be donated to a nonprofit organization, and they're committed to kids that are with life-threatening illnesses. All the process is from the age of 12 to 20, they qualify for these. We have an application that needs to be signed by a physician, signing off that their illness is life-threatening, and that's what qualifies them for these licenses.
And the physician acknowledging that they can participate.
Yeah. And, it just, once the paperwork's done, we receive all that. We submit it to the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. We cover the license fees. Those licenses are returned back to us. We cover the cost of that youth to travel to here in Wyoming. Anybody within their family, friends is welcome to come, and we will cover the cost of that, because we want this to be a full experience.
A life-changing experience.
Life-changing, yes.
And no financial burden.
No financial burden. If there's some financial piece, we'll find a way to make sure it's covered. Yeah, we want everything covered and let them experience the best it could ever be. So
yeah, when you talk hunting, there's an expense associated with hunting.
yes,
This program, our youth committee that is a part of this, we've sat down and we've talked about, the finances involved in being able to provide these hunts, travel, lodging, meals, and it's not just one meal, it's meals from the time they get here till the time they get home. License fee, as you mentioned. But then when you think about hunting, what are the, there's some expenses there. Hunting is not a cheap endeavor.
no,
A lot of these children, they come from other places, so meat processing is certainly something that needs to be looked at. The shipping of the meat, that's become more challenging in recent years. And then, of course, there's the memory of the hunt. And when you talk about a keepsake, if you will, from the hunt and storing that mental Rolodex of that experience to be able to recall and smile upon years later, nothing does that more than that animal on your wall in your living room, right?
absolutely. And that's for everybody.
And that is, and it is. There's a reason why they score animals and how big they are, and there's big buck contests and big bull contests, and that's just all in fun. But the trophy is not by the size of the animal; it's by the experience in the field. And recently, I haven't heard someone say they were mounting a doe deer, and I thought, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, why not? I was like, no, I'm with you. He's like, I love them. Yeah, they're beautiful. They're and look at the challenges. And we got a lot to get into on that. But the Putting the U in Hunt program, that's a very valuable program. Again, 87 youth have participated in this program to date, but it is a program that survives on word of mouth.
Yeah, that's the only way we get it out. And we have some other organizations out there to help us out, reaching out to some of these people.
But there's not like just a list of applicants like, oh, let's go to this database and call this child in Connecticut or Arkansas or South Carolina and say, hey, you want to come hunt Wyoming?
Yeah.
No, it don't work like that.
No. So, yeah, we definitely need, you can always go to our website, muleyfanatic.org, and find out more information on this stuff. And, contact information for our organization. So if you know any child that qualifies for this program, definitely reach out to us immediately and making sure we get them on the list so we can always fill these holes.
Yeah, and kudos to the Game and Fish Commission for the Wyoming Game and Fish Department to make this program intentional, but also somewhat simple.
Yep.
I mean, it is not a lengthy process. As you mentioned, it is a one-page application that the child and the parents or the guardian go before their physician. They have to sign off on this, what the life-threatening illness is. If you think about the 87 youth to date, Joey, that have participated in this, the range of impact of what those illnesses consist of, they're across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are so significant and so severe that you would think, how can that child even hunt?
Right.
Wheelchair-bound, breathing tube, special design features to allow for a breathing mechanism to activate the trigger. One of the biggest challenges, and we've seen this many times, is the child being able to locate that, whether it's deer, elk, or pronghorn, and we offer those 3 hunts available on this license program to be able to find a clear sight picture in a scope.
Yeah.
And then the ability to use a phone and a phone scope. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I think the toughest thing for me in all of these hunts, it's and it's hard not to get emotional about these hunts because it really brings great awareness to the things that you take for granted in your own mobility, being able to just walk across the sagebrush steppe or to be able to hike down a hill or up a hill. But it's seeing these parents, mom or dad. We've had both. We've had mom, dad, grandparents. I'd say the majority of the hunts that we have had, usually dad is involved, but we've had hunts where just mom was able to come out, or maybe it was just mom that was in the picture with that child. but it's the regiment of routine that these children and the parents deal with day in and day out, every day. The great satisfaction for me is never about the culmination of the hunt in the harvest or the killing of an animal. It's that there's this very narrow window of their time here where their regiment, they're normal. They're just hunters. They're hunting. They're not, there's no doctor's appointments. There's no poking and prodding and testing and waiting for lads. They're here, they're hunting, and they're in God's country.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I look forward to doing a podcast just on that.
Yeah.
There's so much more to talk about with that program, all the experiences, and even some of our upcoming ones.
And the folks involved.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Look at how many people are involved in this to help champion and become ambassadors to move this program forward. It's all right. So that's one aspect. Again, we're unpacking in our first podcast, Wild Things and Wild Places of the Muley Fanatic Foundation, unpacking how this organization now on its 12th year has come to be, who we are, where we are, what we are, why we are, and then, the third pillar of the mission statement, if you will, that tripod built within that mission statement is not only to provide such supporting services to further the sport of hunting, but the very last line within our mission statement, and that is, and sound wildlife management. That was a very important component when we looked at this long mission statement and we said, well, is it too long? Should we pull some of this out? Each of those, mule deer conservation, sport of hunting, and sound wildlife management, they stood on their own, and there was no ability on our part to be able to remove what each of those in prevalence are for us in the work that we do. And so let's talk about sound wildlife management. That's obviously, to be able to be in the mission statement, it's pretty important. And what does that mean?
Just one of those key things that without that component, how we all talk hunting is conservation. We have a department that manages this wildlife. We need that.
Sure. Yeah, wildlife management.
And it's there. It's going to be there forever. There's no removing this agency, but we need that agency for so many pieces of that. I don't know where to go from, where's the best part to start from and end with this, but without those agencies, without biologists, without those folks that have the knowledge of all this, having to know how to manage a species it's just really, really important. And
there's a lot of moving parts there, isn't there?
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
And, we have these people in place for a reason, and they get those degrees for a reason, and we must trust them for the things they do. Sure, once in a while people we may have a bad apple once or twice or whatever.
Or maybe it's just a decision that we just
It's really hard to disagree with a lot of things. And I think a lot of times when it comes to this, if you work as a team, it'll go a lot further.
Yeah, and, prior to this, we both had careers that were not in the wildlife arena, and we're not immune to it. We continue to question decisions, as we should, all of us. Things that are done in management, sometimes there's a need for change. Well, how's the best way to influence change? Is it pointing fingers and being negative, or is it coming to the table to be solution oriented and say, let's think about this, or what about this? How can we assist in providing different tools to the toolbox? Because at the end of the day, if the decisions are made, well, two ways maybe. Sometimes things are done because that's how they've always been done. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're right, but that's the history of this is how we've always done it. So that's how we will continue to do it. And sometimes that needs a breath of fresh air and new ways of going about it. And so how do you influence that? How do you change that? Is it browbeating someone that they're boneheads? I haven't found that to work.
You build relationships.
You build
relationships with them, and you work together. And when
you look at information, I mean, look at the age in which we live.
Yeah.
Technology and how that's been interjected into the research and the findings, and how that has led to things being done. Some of these have really just been turned upside down and are being done completely differently. And I think that's where sound wildlife management comes into our mission statement, is the accountability that we're making the best decisions possible with the best information we have. And knowing that there's no plateau of we've reached the pinnacle and this is it, that it's evolving. It's like our weather patterns. It's a cycle. It changes. Things change. The landscape is changing. Look at what we're seeing now coming out of one of the most epic winters of impact to our wildlife resource that any of us have ever seen in recent years. And so that provides opportunity for reflection, but it also provides opportunity to how do we navigate this and move forward. And we want to be there. We want to be at the table. We want to assist, not just as an organization, but as sportsmen. You mentioned it at the beginning in sound wildlife management that hunting is a tool of conservation. It's not all conservation, but it's a tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
It is the tool that our wildlife managers use to allow the public who owns the resource to be able to participate in the check and culling of herds to a management objective. Some of those are below, certainly for mule deer. Mule deer have taken it on the chin. They've taken it on the chin big time. There's a number of culprits, and we're going to get into that. In fact, I think, in thinking about that, as our podcast is just getting started and we get our feet under us to get this going, to use this platform to share and showcase the efforts of the Muley Fanatic Foundation and those that support these efforts, sportsmen and sportswomen, partners, stakeholders. It's going to take a couple episodes to really get into the weeds about what we do. So I think episode 2, I think it should just be specific to where mule deer are today, where they have been, and what we're trying to do to assist in sustainable populations moving forward. Because that's an episode in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But sound wildlife management is a key component to that. It's all about accountability and the decisions that are made, the influence to those decisions. And you're right, it starts with relationships. We're all in this together. And there's coffee shops and conversations that happen at the back of a tailgate all over this landscape where people have great ideas. And it's an opportunity for this organization to be a vessel, if you will, to help bring those ideas to the table, to be discussed, to create more dialogue, to unflesh things that we know are maybe not working and ideas that maybe could work better. That's an arena. It's an arena that you have to be in, but you have to have a seat at the table, and that's credibility. And I think our organization, I think we can, not that we're looking for a feather in our cap, but I think that we have always allowed ourselves to be in a position to be able to listen, to understand, and when it's appropriate, disagree, and when it's appropriate, to agree, but to be part of the process, not something that gets in the way of the process.
Right. Yeah. I used to be one of those guys prior to where we're at now.
Me and you both.
Thinking of this is the right way. This is what the department should be doing. Going to meetings and pretty much talking with anger because your frustrations.
Sure.
And sure, nothing happened. Well, just because of my approach, I'm sure you don't want to listen to a negative person. You don't want to listen to someone that has that negative, angry voice coming at you. You're going to try and block them out. And I've realized through this process, I've learned so much, not only from my experiences with some of this research work, hanging out with a with a game biologist, going to other meetings that I've never attended prior to.
Commission meetings.
Yeah. I mean, actually talking and having great conversation goes so much further than the way I used to do it. And sure, there's still a lot of disagreement in what they do, but hey, they can listen to me as I provide my ideas, my thoughts in a well-mannered state to where, they'll listen to me.
And the willingness to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are things done this way, for example? Is it just because this is how it's always been done? Is it challenging to buck the system, to do something different, to implement something different? What I have found is that the accountability for decisions that are made is that there is such an investment of equity of so many people, from the commission to the director's office to all the way to the field level, to the guy or gal in the green truck on the landscape. And then the accountability to the resident and the non-resident, to the people. And then ultimately, most important, the accountability to the resource. Is it what is best for the resource? And there's a lot of factors that go into all of what was just said, a ton. But sound wildlife management for not just, being that we're headquartered in Wyoming, we started in Wyoming, we have a lot of chapter efforts within Wyoming, but we have a presence in multiple other states. And on this initial podcast, I think knowing that we're trying to keep these to 30 minutes, we've got a lot of stuff we've talked about that will be featured in specifics to individual content episodes moving forward. But our effort as an organization is not just limited to Southwest Wyoming or Wyoming as a whole as the cowboy state. We have chapter efforts in Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Nevada, California, and Virginia, of all places.
Yeah.
Still just is. And a very successful chapter.
Very successful.
With a very successful leadership team and organization that is really dialed in to make a difference in a place where mule deer don't even roam. But their recognition of the same accountability and stewardship responsibility that we've talked about already a few times, that they have a role living on the East Coast, but enjoy and have the same passion for a species that calls the West its home, that they recognize that they need to participate also in the conservation. It's not just about them coming out west every time they have the opportunity to draw a license, but it's bigger than that. And so we'll get to that. Our chapter effort is a very important component of the organization. There are several other things within the organization that keep the organization going that we need to talk about. We do have 4 paid staff members within the organization. How that works, who the partners are that assist in grant funding, the fundraising efforts that we have specifically for keeping this operation afloat, the lights on, the internet on, the building that we're in. A 501c3 is a business. It is a business. It's considered a charitable business or a nonprofit business by the IRS classification, but there is overhead, there are salaries, there are wages, there are insurances, there are expenses to be able to operate. And so we need to talk about that. Transparency of everything that we do has been a staple since the onset because of our frustrations that we had that stemmed from 5 years of volunteer efforts with another organization that we just didn't have the answers to some of the questions. And we never wanted to be that organization that somebody wasn't aware of the inner workings of this organization. So we'll get into some of that. Membership, and that's what's so humbling. When you look at this 12 years, Joey, did you ever think from where this started to where we're at today that we would have the membership base that we have? And we have 3 membership offerings, annual, sponsor, and life. But that support and where it comes from, it's very humbling.
Very humbling. Just to know that there's a Muley Fanatic member in every state after 12 years and multiple numbers in each one of those states.
Yeah.
Not only that, but a life member. I mean, to almost be at 600 life members, I never would even thought we'd be at this point after 10 years.
No, and remember early on when we talked about our membership offerings, we spent a lot of time talking about the life membership because a lot of people were asking, do you have a life membership? And we didn't even start offering a life membership until our 7th year because of some data that we had researched and had read that, the NRA had put out some information that had indicated that when people become life members, it's almost like they have reached their level of fulfillment to an organization, and so that they can check that box that they're, it's done. I'm a life member. And we never wanted to be an organization that had people that could check a box to say they were checking out of the efforts of conservation for mule deer, because mule deer, there's no end. There's no finality to that. This is a lifetime effort that we can't afford to have people that can say, well, I've done all I can do. So we spent a lot of time thinking about that before we finally came up with a life membership offering. And now to be on the cusp of 600 life members in, just 4 or 5 years is pretty amazing. Yeah, a lot to talk about. And we're excited about this medium, this venue, this platform. Podcasting is new to us. We're just normal guys.
Yeah.
But when we started this organization, you remember this because you were involved in doing a lot of this. That's really where you're oftentimes in. So I don't take offense to it, but in the role that I have with the organization, and sometimes the face and the voice of the organization, it doesn't bother me, but it does in some regards that, you and I did this, we started this together, you're my brother, but what you do behind the scenes that often isn't talked about or showcased or given credit to, whether it's in media or whatever, is so important. And I love you. You know how important that is. But I want everyone else to know that what you do is so valuable for the efforts of the Muley Fanatic Foundation. And when you talk about communications and podcasting being a platform for communications and an insight, if you will, to the inner workings of us as an organization. When we first started, people said, when we had a membership offering, well, are you going to produce a magazine? Remember that?
Yeah, and
we still hear that. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm a member of another organization, but I get their magazine. Well, are you guys going to do a magazine? And a good friend, Ryan Hatch, who does Muley Crazy Magazine, told you,
yeah,
Joey, do you want to do mule deer conservation or do you want to do magazine publication? Because you can't do both. If you're going to keep a magazine afloat, you're going to spend the majority of your time working on covering the expense associated with the magazine, just in the advertising component. And don't forget, then you also have to find time to provide content.
Yeah.
And you have to meet printing deadlines and printing costs and mailing. I mean, he's like, do you want to do conservation or do you want to be in the magazine business? And that was an eye-opener.
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah.
And it was
very thankful for that conversation.
Yeah, very thankful he told you that.
Yeah, I mean, even when we did that, our
monthly newsletter. Look at the time that went into that.
Yeah, and that didn't have any sponsors, nothing. It was just content, getting it prepped and making that deadline, getting it printed out there in time for that issue.
Yeah, and really, I think that's what drove us to even pursue the bi-monthly newsletter is our accountability to the membership base that supports the Muley Fanatic Foundation is how do we keep them informed of the ongoings of this organization, because it's 100 miles an hour all the time.
Yep.
And there's a lot of things that are being done. So how do you get that out? So you provide that accountability to them of what you're doing. Look at the changes that have been made to the website.
Yeah.
From day one to where it's at now.
Yeah.
That didn't happen overnight. But that's another tool, another platform of communications. And then you add in all the social media stuff, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Twitter, all of that is part of our culture. You have to put the information out where people are looking for information. And then I think that's what's driving this podcast, Wild Things and Wild Places, is that there are so many things, there are so many places that we need to be able to have the opportunity to share and showcase what this organization is doing that is accountable to the mission statement, and to provide the information of the various challenges, obstacles, successes, and pursuits that we are tackling every day that all go back to the mission statement of the Muley Fanatic Foundation. And I think this platform is going to be healthy for us to be able to do that. We are, and we'll put this out there now, we are anticipating that this will be a weekly show. I'm taking this on as a personal challenge to be able to provide content that will be worthy to build an audience, to give that insight to the efforts of Muley Fanatics, our partnerships that we have with so many that we work with on a daily basis, from state partners to federal partners to private landowners to everyday sportsmen and sportswomen. There isn't one above the other in our mind. They're all a necessity that are very important. Decision makers, legislative folks, policy arenas. I mean, there's so many things that go on. Hopefully this will provide a medium to give folks the opportunity to know what we do and how we do it and where we do it, why we do it. This initial broadcast is going to come out Tuesday, July 4th. We picked that date specifically, and I want to close with that and know that July 4th it's not just another day. It's a very important day. Obviously, it's Independence Day, but what does that mean specific to the Muley Fanatic Foundation? And I can sum it up. I put a lot of thought into this, and that's why we want this to launch and debut on July 4th. Is we live in the greatest nation on the planet that has come at the sacrifice of many men and women for the freedoms that we have, that to be able to even sit down and talk about mule deer would not be possible if it wasn't for the blood that has been shed that allow us to live in this country that rings with freedom. And so every Tuesday moving forward, we'll have a new episode. We do want this to be engaging and interactive, and for people to say, hey, let's talk about this. Long-range shooting, predator control. I mean, there's so many topics out there, and I think that this will be great for us to be able to dive into this arena and provide some insight to the things that we do. So one thing that we're going to have, and it'll be a part of every episode, and it'll start with this initial episode, is we do want to celebrate the sport of hunting and how important that is as a heritage. And so every episode will end with a sub-show, Campfire Chat. That idea has been around. We've been kicking that around for some time.
Yeah. Goes right back to going out hunting, out in the outdoors. One of those big things you look forward to. Sitting around the campfire, end of your hunting day, and talking about your memories.
That's right. Creating memories, talking about memories, and just celebrating being proud to be a hunter. So our Campfire Chat, we'll have a sub-show is what Shireen has told me that is called, because I ran the idea by her. I was like, what do you think of this, Shireen? Like, at the end of every episode, which we had intentionally said we want to try to keep around 30 minutes, but then add the Campfire Chat to that. And she's like, oh, no, I think it's a great idea. She was very supportive. We'll have Shireen on a show one of these times, just because, much like you, the behind-the-scenes work that sometimes doesn't get the credit that it deserves,
right,
is going to be very important. And so I think it's worth talking to her about that, because what she's going to do to be able to make this a polished, finished product to be able to put out, to listen to us two goofballs talk about something that is our everyday life is...
yeah, if it was for her, we wouldn't be right here, right now.
We would.
She's been very key on this.
All right, anything you want to add? I know we've just barely scratched the surface, and I can't wait till we start talking about the very important folks that are involved with this organization. On this first just kind of intro of this huge 30,000-foot view of the Muley Fanatic Foundation, where do you want to close it?
As we've already discussed, we're just normal sportsmen. We created an organization, created our own jobs, which is a fantastic dream, and we're protecting a species that we're so passionate about. We have a fantastic staff here, and there's only 4 of us, and that is so we can hold, which we'll talk about, the 70-30 model at some point, where 70% stays on the ground and 30% comes back to headquarters to cover what we've talked about and to fund other projects. But we always strive to do things different, and we want to make a difference. And we put a lot of hard work and effort from all 4 of us to make that happen. And in my mind, it's an organization like no other in my mind. And that's how I see it. And it's probably the reason why we are successful after 12 years. And I look forward to talking more about the organization, having just that mule deer conversation. I mean, I've loved this species since I was 5 years old, and I look forward to just talking about just those little things and what we can do and making sure that this is one big game species that doesn't hit the endangered species list, because that's always been in my mind. This would be the one. I hope people enjoy these podcasts. I hope folks enjoy listening to the conversations and really understand why, to really use your support for this organization. And again, go muleyfanatic.org. You find more information. We try and get as much as we can on there, provide the information that's needed, and just give us a call too.
Yeah, we're very approachable. I think you're spot on, Joey, in what you've said. I think directing people to the website is that, of all the different mediums, and now podcast included, if there's one source or one funnel to where we still host the best source of information, the most up-to-date source, whether it's chapter activities or headquarter activities, events, youth hunts, etc., project proposal submission forms, everything, we have not found a better place to host that than on our website, muleyfanatic.org. But calling and getting in that arena, making that call, I want to be involved. Yeah. There's 17 chapters in 7 states. We don't recruit chapters. This isn't an effort where, and we're going to get into that, this isn't an effort where you can say, man, let's look at a map. Boy, Sheridan, Wyoming needs a chapter.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. Not for us. Maybe it does for others, but not for us.
No.
The people that carry this mission forward have the same DNA in passion for mule deer, furthering the sport of hunting, and knowing they have a role to be a part of the solution that drives them to pick up the phone and say, I'd like to learn a little bit more. I'd like to wear this banner or ride for this brand and do this to make a difference in my backyard. And that's really the niche that I think our mule deer conservation organization has. There are other conservation organizations out there. Many of them are partners of ours. We partner a lot with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, Trout Unlimited. We've partnered with all of them. Mule Deer Foundation. We're both life members of the Mule Deer Foundation. We just found a different niche or a different piece of the pie that allows for us to put efforts forth that are designed to make a local difference in a local area. All the other efforts, they're needed. Conservation is needed at every level and with every organization. So this isn't a competition. It's just, this is the piece of the pie that we found that we know can be difference making at a very local ground landscape level, to where folks can measure the fruit of their own labor in their own backyard. Well, I think that's a wrap on looking at the time. I know Shalane is going to, I thought you were going to keep it to 30 minutes. I can hear that conversation coming, but there's just so much to unpack. And on that note, thank you for joining us for Wild Things and Wild Places, a podcast production of the Muley Fanatic Foundation. And those will all be available as part of a library, again, on our website, muleyfanatic.org. Until next time, happy trails.
Gathered around the campfire's flickering glow, stories ignited, bridging hearts and minds as the world outside faded and connection reign supreme. Welcome to Campfire Chat.
Let's get right to it. Campfire Chat designed to celebrate a sister or brother who identifies as a hunter. And joining us on this inaugural podcast of Campfire Chats, Janet, you certainly you do in that regard. You are a hunter, and that is an activity, a recreational activity, but also a way of life that you and your husband Jay certainly have as something you look forward to every fall. But it's just it helps define who you are. And so let's talk about hunting. What is hunting to you?
So hunting, big thing is I get to spend time with my husband up on the mountain, conservation, wildlife management, and we eat all of the meat that we get. So we know where our food comes at all times.
All right. What is the most exciting aspect of hunting that just really gets your heart racing?
Being on the mountain. I love being up there, and I'm not, like, my husband definitely hunts more than I do, but helping him pack out, just seeing everything that Mother Nature has to offer and seeing all the wildlife. And
yeah, that's all good. It's all very good.
Yeah.
Your favorite species to hunt, to chase and pursue?
Mine is elk.
Elk? Okay.
I enjoy hunting elk just because it's a bigger target for me.
Yeah, certainly it is. Your favorite part of the elk to eat? Do you have a favorite recipe?
So mine obviously is the tenderloins. My husband has this amazing recipe that he takes bacon and wraps it around the tenderloin and puts it on a camp chef. Yeah.
Smokes it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Certain wood he uses for that, or?
He uses the apple wood.
Yeah, hunting is it is something to celebrate. You are taking the life of a wild beast and field dressing it. Hopefully the take or the kill of that animal is done ethically. That is always the aim, to try to take that life in the most ethical and humane way possible. But it doesn't always work. Have you ever had an experience where you've had to shoot your weapon at an animal more than once?
Yes.
Yeah. Anybody who has hunted probably has run into that. That always, for me, makes me just want to be that much better and do that better the next time. Because that's never a great experience. But oftentimes, certainly it is an experience that occurs in the field on a regular basis. What firearm do you use, Janet?
It depends. I have 243 if I'm hunting in deer, or I sometimes use my husband's 7mm.
Do you have a range that you're most comfortable with? I think that close. Yeah,
the closer the better. 100, 150 is going comfort.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So oftentimes, especially with some of the hunter ed courses that we instruct, it seems like there is this cultural shift where folks want to talk about, I could get that at 800-900 yards, and certainly there are people out there that have developed a skill set with their weapon to be able to take those long shots. But I have always still believed that the closer you can get, and to put the effort into the stock to close that gap, is part of the hunt that I just relish in. And so that 100 to 150 yards, that takes some effort. Let's talk about probably if you have one memory in all the years, and you've been hunting for how many years now?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. So you have one hunt that maybe stands out where you were just like, maybe it was a weather element or an experience of trying to close that gap. Is there one that just stands out where you're just like, man, what a great memory?
Yes, I have several, because anybody that knows my husband knows that our hunts are never boring.
They're never textbook, are they?
No. But my favorite was that we had tags down south. My husband had gotten elk in Clay Basin, and of course it was a muddy, sloppy, been raining, snowing mess. So,
that's a soupy country when it's wet.
Yeah. So it was down in the bottom of a pretty big ravine, and we had to use a four-wheeler to winch it out. And as he's winching it up the hill, I'm on the back of the elk, just directing the antlers to keep him from digging into the mud and making it worse. Once we got it up to the truck, we had cut it in half and put the front half on the four-wheeler, and he loaded it. We were having a very hard time getting the back part up because we'd closed the tailgate and we were just trying to lift it over. Well, I'm not the strongest person in the world, but my husband's trying to do most of it by grabbing around the waist and trying to pick it up. And he was having a hard time. So I told him, I'm like, if you can just get it up on the back and just hold it for a couple seconds. Well, he did. And I went underneath the elk and lifted up on it, and it pushed it over the edge. But when I came out from under, I was covered in blood and mud and just soaking wet from head to toe.
Oh, you heard that, didn't you?
Yes.
But, you know, whether it's field dressing, packing it out, closing that gap, taking it back after it's home, and being able to cut that up and to have those great meals and feasts where you get to put the time and the effort in to savor in the wrapping it in bacon and putting it on the Camp Chef or the Traeger and letting it cook all day long. I mean, all of that is all part of the experience, is it not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoy every component of it. And really it starts, I don't know that there's ever an off time, Joey. Is there for you where you're not thinking about hunting? I mean, just last week, tag results came out, or the license draw results. I mean, it started, I mean, there's a lot of even strategies of when am I going to put in for my license? I mean, Joey's very superstitious. What about you guys?
Yeah.
And your family? I mean, is there like a certain day, like, oh, well, I don't put in, you know, we have until the end of May, but I do it on Valentine's because, you know, it's my love. No, I mean, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I don't. I'm just saying. I mean, but there are some quirky things out there. I mean, I got a buddy, Rowdy. He won't even check his tag results until like a week after they've come out because he thinks it jinxes him. Are you serious? Give me your social. Let me look that up.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what you're hunting.
How's that worked out?
What about you guys, Jen? I mean, for you.
Last week, because when we do ours, we're one of those people that wait till the last minute. And it's like my husband's down looking at every tag, you know, how your odds are and everything. And so it's usually down to the last 2 days before he'll finally submit them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's all of that. It's not just that special week or weekend in the fall. It really is year round, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what have you learned that you know now, 20 years after the fact, that you wish you would have known when you first started hunting?
Oh, gosh. Probably just the love of it. Like you know, I don't know if it's the right word, understanding the animals, learning their patterns, learning, you know, just what magnificent creatures they are. I never had when I first started hunting, I didn't start hunting until I met my husband. So, you know, just knowing there's so much more to them than just the hunting, and learning so much about the animals and just how they live. I just never had a concept of any of that.
Yeah, that intimate relationship and how they interact with nature and how you interact with them to try to understand them, to be a better ultimate hunter in your take of them. That's a learning curve that comes year after year, isn't it?
Yes.
I got one final question. Your favorite piece of hunting gear that you utilize now? Maybe it's just an upgrade of gear, optics or whatever, but your favorite piece of gear that you have today that you didn't have when you started?
My hiking boots.
Footwear.
Yeah.
Yeah, how amazing is that? I would have said you better gun.
That's probably because Jay hasn't bought her a new one.
Yeah, you can use my seconds.
Yeah.
We're at the new rifle. Yeah, let me pass this.
Yeah, that's exactly
how that goes.
After 20 years, come on.
Yeah, footwear is important.
Yeah. I started out with tennis shoes, and my husband was making so much fun of me, telling me how much my feet would hurt, and they did. And now, I mean, last year I went to help him pack out an elk, and I was in tennis shoes, and I paid for it.
Oh, man. Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does.
My wife, Nikki, that's what she wore, too, the first time. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, well, this is what I wear. Like, oh.
Yeah, my youngest daughter, Sherman calls her Flip-Flop to this day as a nickname because she showed up, you know, we left early in the morning. She forgot her boots.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, well, why are you looking at me? They're your boots.
Yeah.
She's like, Dad, I forgot them. I'm in flip-flops. All right, here we go.
Nikki doesn't have those tennis shoes anymore because I sprayed elk urine on them because we were archery. We'll use those again.
No, those are going to be outside.
Yeah. I have several pairs that have elk urine on them.
Yeah.
But they're my hiking boots are probably the most valuable thing to me. So
that's a very important piece of gear. I'm kind of a gearhead. I mean, something new comes out and it just seems to be better than what you have. And you're like, yeah, I probably need that. I probably need that. If there's been one staple that has been able to be maintained throughout the 20 years of you doing it, what would that item be?
Probably my backpack. I mean, I've used the same one pretty much. Well, I mean, it's upgraded a few times, but my backpack's probably the same thing I've used for several years.
What about you, Joey? Is there one item that you're still using today that you started with? I mean, a knife or a lucky shirt or a lucky sweater, or
It doesn't matter what I wear or use. It's no luck whatsoever. I don't think there really is, because things have changed so much that I've tried something new, I think, every year. And I haven't really held on to anything probably longer than a few years, I think.
I mean,
Really, it's probably the firearm. I've used that 7mm that I bought, I don't know, 20 years ago.
yeah, how many times have you changed loads on the firearm, where you've gone to different brands or you've hand loaded something? I mean, has that changed, or are you just, nope, I am a Remington 130 grain over the counter at the local sporting goods store every year?
Yeah, over the counter Remington. I've used that majority of the time. Nowadays, it's hard to find it, so sure, I've changed up a little bit, but it's just a matter of taking it out into the field and making sure it works for you before you take it hunting. So
Yeah, for me, it's always, I've had this same knife that I don't carry it every day. Because I'm afraid I'll lose it. But it just has meaning, where that's the knife. And Joey, you know the problems I've had with some. I've lost a couple of knives over the years, but I have this one knife that it may not be the knife I'm using, but it's in the backpack, and it's like, yep, that's the go-to staple that goes on every hunt. Well, Janet, it's great to talk to you about hunting. It's something to be celebrated. I look forward to many more discussions with many more folks as we talk Campfire Chat. Just talk about the love of hunting, because it is something to be celebrated. What's the dream hunt? If you were queen for a day, you may be queen of the office, but if you were queen for a day and you said, I can do this and make this dream come true, what would that hunt be?
Honestly, I think my dream hunt is watching my husband. So him to have, get that monster mule deer that he's always wanted, and to be on that trip with him, I think that would be my ultimate one dream.
That would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, be on the mountain, watch him in the glass. And I assume he hunts very similar. He likes to close the gap, get as close as he can, enjoy the sneak and the stalk.
His love is bow hunting, so yes.
Oh, matching wits with the beast on the mountain in their backyard. That's cool. Well, Janet, thank you so much for Campfire Chat. Best of luck to you this fall, spending that time with your husband. And it was a pleasure to have you on here on our inaugural Campfire Chat, just talking hunting.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Wild Things and Wild Places. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. Make sure you never miss out by subscribing. Whether you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, streaming us on our website, or following us on social media, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more wild episodes.
Everybody knows I'm a Muley Fanatic.